What's up, guys? It's Casey Zogelman, aka the fourth Sanderson sister, coming at you with another Hocus Pocus lore / theory video. In today's video, I'm going to be deep diving into a few plot points of Hocus Pocus 1 that don't exactly match up to things we learned in Hocus Pocus 2. These range from little things no one's really ever thought about to some bigger things that have been pointed out. All of this leads back to one question. How much of the Sanderson Sisters legend is fake? And who made up the parts that are made up? I'm going to answer those questions today, so grab your brooms and journey with me into the legend of the Sanderson Sisters. So let's go ahead and address the one that comes and goes. Did the Sanderson Sisters actually sell their souls for powers? They make plenty of references to the devil being their master in both HP1 and one kind of off-the-cuff one in Hocus Pocus 2. I mean, the scene in HP1 with Gary Marshall alone is argument to say they sold their souls to the devil.
Forget the kids, I'm serving you from my cauldron. Winnie!
Yes?
For you.
Master, I thank thee. Master, would thou dance with me?
Not to mention Winifred turning to stone in the graveyard for touching hallowed ground. But did they sell their souls for powers? Nay. They did not. How do we know this? Well, the prologue of Hocus Pocus 2 tells us everything we need to know. If they had sold their souls and made a pact with the devil, it would have been more of a process than just receiving book from Mother Witch. Not to mention, it's very clear that magic is an ability you're born with in Hocus Pocus, like in the Harry Potter universe. We see this from young Winnie's introduction to Mother Witch. She could smell the magic on her.
Die.
So, the Sanderson sisters were born witches. They made no deal to receive their magic. Now, this does not mean they don't have a master in the devil. Let's be logical about this thing. Mother Witch taking them under her wing means they'd be worshipping who she worships, so they'd grow to believe in him and that side of magic. This could rot their souls, which I believe is why they grow so old and haggard at younger ages, and make them vulnerable to, let's call it, holy magic, like hallowed ground. However, that doesn't mean they made a pact to give up their souls for powers. They might have pledged themselves, like Anakin Skywalker did with Darth Sidious when he became Darth Vader. He began to learn the secrets of the dark side from Darth Sidious and no longer use the light side. Honestly, the Sandersons could easily be in a master and apprentice relationship through Mother Witch. She's their master, but she answers to the devil, making him the master of the Sanderson sisters as well. I make this Sith and Jedi comparison because there's plenty of evidence of the existence of good witches in the Hocus Pocus universe as well. That universe is Jedi. Obviously, light magic is evident in Becca, Izzy, and Cassie, but also in Allison. If we reference this moment...
What a clever little white witch. But it will not save thy friends. No.
We can also gather that maybe Allison is also a witch. This is further proved by the novelization of the first movie, which I have right over there, and I will read a passage to you now. She's jealous, Winifred said, and isn't she pretty, almost as pretty as her ancestor, little Elizabeth Podberry, the Good Witch. Good to the very last bite, Mary cried, licking her lips. Allison's descended from a good witch. Hence, she's a good witch. Case closed. So that's another light magic user. These witches clearly did not sell their souls for magic, so in this universe's canon, such a thing is not necessary to gain powers. The good witches derive their magic from probably nature rather than darkness. It's like the light side of the force versus the dark side. There are good spells and there are bad spells. It all depends on which type you choose to wield. The Sanderson sisters were raised to only use dark magic and not light magic, which leads to those very evil deeds that rotted their souls, but they did not sell them. That, I believe, is why this happened when Winifred shows up to give up her powers, and essentially her life, to be with her sisters.
Sister!
That radiant light emitting from their dust was proof of their souls remaining intact, and why they didn't shoot straight down to hell when they died. Instead, they're stuck in purgatory, where, at least in my faith, you have time to answer for your sins or be stuck there until doom cracks. So this first little plot point in the Sanderson legend is false. This section is going to be very slim, as we definitely know this piece was dramatized.
This is the spell book of Winifred Sanderson. It was given to her by the devil himself. The book is bound in human skin and contains the recipes for her most powerful and evil spells.
I get the picture.
So, Allison says that the book was given to Winifred by the devil himself. This part was clearly falsified, as we plainly saw that Winifred received the book from Mother Witch and not the devil. It was a birthday gift from one witch to another, so yeah, that part of the legend was also fake. Now here's one I bet you guys never caught, and I only did recently during our 30th anniversary watch-along back in July, and if you haven't seen the VOD for that, you can watch it by clicking on this thing right here. There's a pretty big part of the legend that we just kind of let slip right on by us without a second thought, and it's this one.
Legend has it that the bones of 100 children were buried within these walls.
Oh, great.
Now you're probably sitting there going, oh please, Casey, that part has to be true. You're off your rocker on this one. Am I? To you all again, I say, nay nay. Because, get this, you're never gonna unsee it once I tell ya.
Get on with it.
The walls were built after the Sanderson sisters were killed. What? I know what you're thinking, but the walls were right outside the Sanderson sisters' cottage. Built outside their house. Yes, built by the Sanderson sisters. No. When we see what Thackeray Binks sees from a distance, there are 0 surrounding walls or gates to the Sanderson cottage. We see Thackeray sneaking up to the house and over a small mossy rock in a creek, but not over any walls. And when we go outside the Sanderson house during the hanging, hold on, is that a wall? Nope. That there is a small rocky cliff face or part of a dried up creek bed, which makes sense considering the creek Thackeray forded and the water wheel. There's plenty of other rocky boulders and rock faces hanging around, but nary a wall to be seen. Interesting how that part came to be. One might argue that even if the walls were erected after their deaths, it was the grave for the bones of the children the villagers found when they ransacked the cottage. Well, Emily was buried in the graveyard, even though it was acknowledged on her tombstone how she died, so it would make sense for any other remains found to be buried in the religious graveyard, and services would be held. The walls and gate would serve as a no trespassing warning to the rest of the village. They may have placed the bones of those kids inside the walls due to them being, possibly, used in rituals, but again, I rather doubt it since this is such a pious community. It makes plenty of sense that the villagers would wall it off and place the gate there to keep people out of the cursed house. But it looks like those walls might have also been erected when the Sanderson Museum of Witchcraft opened originally, because several witch trial exhibits were erected outside of their home, like the stockade. This is another good way to keep out trespassers and troublemakers. Plus, since the museum was shut down, it makes sense that the gate and walls would look a little undercared for. However, I think it would have been the villagers of Salem Old that likely are the culprits of the wall's erection. So, while the religious leaders could have ordered the bones of the dead children to be buried in the walls, I believe this part of the legend was created for the sheer addition to the lore and is therefore a false. The last thing I want to address in the legend is actually something from, well, it's not really the canon, it is and isn't something from the canon of Hocus Pocus, and that has to deal with their parentage. I say is and isn't because it was never once addressed in the original film, which is the main source of the canon, but it was addressed in the novelization that was based on the original shooting script, but not the final cut. So it's a little confusing, especially when we hear the Sanderson sisters reference their father in Hocus Pocus 2. So let me explain why this is still kind of pertinent to their legend and whether or not it was falsified. In the novelization, as Allison is giving Max and Danny a tour of the museum, they stumble upon 3 wax figures of the Sanderson sisters. Allison then proceeds to tell them, "That's Winifred, the eldest sister," said Allison. "Her father was a warlock." She pointed to a chubby woman whose dark hair curled like a horn on top of her head. "This is Mary, the middle sister. Her father was a bloodhound. She could follow the scent of a child for miles." And then, in an interview, Sarah Jessica said that Sarah's father was the village idiot. So, it was said they shared 1 mother and 3 fathers. This was clearly false, as it is stated by Winifred in Hocus Pocus 2 that their father died and that he was the town apothecary. The part about 1 mother could be referring to Mother Witch, who is their surrogate mother and not their biological one. However, it's clear that they were sired by the same man with, in my thought process, 3 different mothers. If you want my full theory on that, you can watch it by clicking on this thing or right here. The point is, this part of their history was fake. That said, I don't know if we can really count this section in with the canon of the story, considering it was only addressed in the novelization and not the movie. But I felt the need to say something about it. Now, this all begs the question of who is it that started this legend, who exaggerated these details, and ultimately who is responsible for the Sanderson sisters' botched history? The people who write history are usually the winners, correct? And who is it that won overall and has first-hand experience with the witches? The answer is as plain as the nose on my face. The culprit kept journals that were passed down through Salem's history and made their way into Gilbert's hands. Reverend Trask is the reason their history is the way it is. Who else could it be? It's this guy! Reverend Trask is our culprit, and the reason the Sanderson history is the way it is. He has every motive to fake their legend and absolve him of any guilt as to why they became who they became. That's right! This legend was exaggerated and stretched out to throw blame off of himself and onto the Sanderson sisters.
Because when you feel like a dirtbag, it's because you're a dirtbag, right? So just own it. Just say it out loud. I am a dirtbag.
They did not conform to his idea, or really that period's society's idea of normal. It was normal for women to marry at a very young age, for orphans to be taken in by a neighboring family or the town head until they could be placed, and for women to listen and obey everything a man said. Guess who didn't do that? Ding, ding, ding! The Sanderson sisters. Yes, they did turn to dark magic, but only after they were driven out of their community by Reverend Trask! They did do terrible things like the of children and turning Thackeray into a cat, which I have a theory coming up on that one as to how other people knew about that, but they were pushed towards the darkness in order to survive. We don't know when they committed their first murder, nor if it was maybe against their free will, i.e. Mother Witch pushing them into it, so they could have planned to just do like prank type spells or something akin to the cat spell. Everything I laid out above, in the legend format, has the stench of Reverend Trask all over it. It was clearly written by a man of the church who feared everything. Of course, he would dictate that they sold their souls to the devil and the book was a gift from him. If the bones of children were buried in the wall that was later constructed, it would be on his orders. It's clear in Hocus Pocus 1 that he probably wasn't the active leader anymore. I believe that honor went to Thackeray's father, but his influence in the town was never forgotten. He'd easily be one of the town's elders, and probably the one running the show behind the scenes. His journals are the history passed down generation after generation in Salem, and therefore would dictate how the museum and the townspeople saw the witches. Yes, they're bad guys, and I'm not defending their evil deeds, but their legend is incorrectly passed down due to it being written by someone who, frankly, wasn't them. In fact, it was written by the man who hated them for not conforming to his rules and the rules of society. It's like Becca said, the patriarchy dictated everything in those days. So, of course, Trask doesn't want anyone knowing that the Sanderson sisters became the evil witches they were because of his actions. Because he drove them out of the town. Because he was forcing them to do things they didn't want to do. He is the cause of this. He did what every person did back then and used the devil as a scapegoat for his own failures, and that is how we ended up with those pieces of information that were falsified in the Sanderson Sisters legend. So there you have it. There's the Sanderson Sisters legend broken down into what was false, what was fact, and who recorded the falsified legend and why. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to drop a like and subscribe if you haven't. It's free, it helps me, and what helps me helps you guys get more great content like this. Check the community tab for any updates on my October upload schedule, and tune in tomorrow night at 7:30 p.m. Central Standard Time, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time for Black Flame Gaming. I know this is super early in the week, and we usually do it on Friday or Saturday, but my work schedule's nuts, so we just kind of have to do it this way. We'll be starting a new series with the Sanderson Sisters play Man of Medan, a horror game just in time for the rest of spooky season. Now, this is a rated M game, so if you're under 18, I'm sorry, you won't be able to watch without parental permission. I'm setting it as an 18+ stream, just a precaution on my part. If you're not a member of the Discord server, join the Discord. Please join the Discord and get to know your fellow coven mates. Link in the comments down below. If you're a regular on this channel, please remember to drop a like and share your thoughts on this theory of the false Sanderson legend down below as well. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm Casey Zogelman, aka the Fort Sanderson Sister, and I'll see you witches and wizards later.